This episode of Troxel Podcast is supported by Twinmotion, the simple, real-time rendering solution to create high-quality imagery, client presentations, and interactive experiences that help communicate your design ideas fast. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel, and in this episode, I welcome Tyler Goss. Tyler is a thoughtful and strategic leader focused squarely on catalyzing change in the built environment through the leverage of novel technologies, business models, process improvement, and policy reform. Or as he puts it, problem solver. And if you look at his career pedigree, it is heavily technology focused. He's worked at Case, WeWork, Turner Construction, Disney, and most recently at Hypar. But I think after hearing what you just heard, the problem solver moniker works. Tyler and I finally met in person at the Designing Futures Council Leadership Summit on Technology and Applied Innovation, which is a mouthful of a conference name, in early 2020 after being loosely acquainted on Twitter. And it was an amazing event. It was where Tyler and others, including Daniel Davis, who was previously on the show as well, delivered a truly thoughtful presentation on the needs of the future of our profession, and it had very little to do with technology. This conversation is loose and spans a wide range of topics, and while I don't really want to list them all out here like I normally do in these introductions, I have some good teaser material from our conversation to whet your appetite. I actually wrote these down as the conversation was going on in real time because I thought they were funny or interesting or provocative. So here they are. We're actively lying to ourselves. A practice in the sublimation of dopamine. Everyone brings their baggage. And finally, I thought that was the future. So I hope that gets you excited for this conversation. So without further ado, I bring you Tyler Goss. I was supposed to go whitewater rafting with my 16-year-old. He just turned 16. I do like this coming of age trip with my boys.
Cool.
So I still have one more boy to go. He'll be 16 next year, but I had to cancel it. It had already been canceled once because he got sick, and now this happened. So maybe next year now, and it's like it's not going to be the same next year. He's going to be 17, and there's just so much that happens in a year.
Right. And he has to share it now with his brother because his brother is 15 and next year he's 16, right? You know.
Oh, I owe them individual trips. But it's funny because you think about like, why does time go by so fast? And I recently heard about this. I can't remember who. Maybe it might have been like Casey Neistat or something. It was a YouTube video, I think. Mm-hmm. It's like the older you get, you know, if you think about yourself at a young age, every new thing, it's 1 year apart, right? Which is a long time. But the older you get, now you're dividing it by smaller amounts. So for 100% of his life, he has 17 of them. Yeah. For 100% of my life, I have 46 of them. So the pieces of the pie just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, you know, I've like as a segue into talking about work and practice, like, you know, I have gotten to the point now, I'm 43, right, where I am not going to be the hands-on technologist anymore, right? It's just not going to happen. That was moving into what does it mean to be a manager? What does it mean to be a leader in an organization was really difficult because, you know, you're used to, if you're a designer, you're a junior associate, you're a project manager, whatever you are, you get that dopamine hit when you draw the line and it's the correct line, right? Or you move the wall and it makes the building better. And you don't get that anymore. You have to, like, the management and leadership is like a practice in sublimation of dopamine. So, you know, but you're going to get a great reward when your team takes off or when the project is complete, but you don't get that individual hit every day. You don't get we always talk about in the software world, getting inside the user's dopamine cycle so that when they hit something, they get satisfied and they want to do it again. Right.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when you're a manager to let go of that. You know?
It's kind of like going on a mission where like you're going to go to a third world country and everybody comes back and it was like more impactful for the person who went than the people who were there and received the, people always say like, oh, I got more out of this than they did. That to me is what leadership is, right? It's like, by enabling other people to have that feeling that you have at scale, should be that part of your life where like you still get it because they're getting it, because you're enabling them to get it, because you're removing the roadblocks for them to see those advancements happen. And that is so hard for people to cross that divide, I think.
And it's no longer about you. It can't be about you. It has to be about the team. And that's parenting too, right? Like, I was talking to my wife the other day about, how do we navigate the like tough political and socioeconomic landscape that's going to be that our kids are going to inherit. And, I want to go out and I want to fight in the streets. But she's like, no, but it's not our fight anymore. It's our kids' fight, right? They're the ones who are going to hopefully, right all of the wrongs that we did to the planet as a generation, right?
I think it's a great book. I watched like a visual book report by Casey Neistat's brother, Van Neistat, who has a YouTube channel, which I freaking love. It's called the now that I'm about to say it, it's the Spirited Man. That's what it is. The Spirited Man. So he has like kind of this persona that he makes videos about. And he did a book report on a book called The Fourth Turning. And a turning is, you could think of it kind of like an era. He breaks down every 80 years into a turning, or no, sorry, it's 80 years is like the era. It's broken down into 4 parts. Every 20 years is a turning. We are in the fourth turning in this cycle. And he actually describes in the book what it's kind of generational, but again, it's 20 years. So, you've got the boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and the Gen Zers. And he actually calls the Gen Xers, actually, I don't remember what the Gen Xers were called. I called it the Fixers, but that was not correct. He had some other name for it. The millennials are the ones who are actually like righting the wrongs. But the Gen Zers, which is who your kids are the artists. And that is when the new era begins.
Oh, interesting.
And it is kind of interesting to think about it from your wife's perspective. They're saying it's their fight. They're going to be the ones who take this into a new way. And right. It is interesting because he in North America specifically, he goes through these 80-year cycles, and every 80 years there has been a major crisis. COVID's ours. But before that, it was various wars, things like that. So it's really interesting to kind of see it play out. And they're saying, the end of it is 2028, 2030, somewhere around there. It's never like clockwork, but it's a general time. And that is when the artists blossom. And that gives me some hope.
Yeah, it gives me hope too. Like the quote that's been running through my head constantly over the last, 5 years since the 2016 elections, the Gramsci quote, which is a very famous Antonio Gramsci quote: "The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters." Right? There are all of we're creating right now these, because there is this flux between what the world was for us and what the world will be for our kids. There's this incredible political flux. This is why the wars happen. This is why the crises happen. Is that our systems and our structures aren't capable of handling something that like spins out of control, and we can't manage it anymore. And it creates monsters. But the nice thing is that those monsters don't live in the new world that is created. Right? They're there to help the new world be born. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking that we should have a quote battle, because I'm thinking about Buckminster Fuller. I'm pulling it up right now. He said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete."
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was funny that reminds me of a story. When I was working at Turner as the regional director of VDC in New York. And I got this opportunity to come back to California, which we've been trying to do for years anyway, to build a department in the Bay Area. And one of the first things when I got there was there was this mandate to get the entire estimating and scheduling team skilled up on Revit and Vico. And Vico Office being this, it was a 4D and 5D estimating scheduling tool, had pull scheduling. It was a pretty amazing platform and complex platform. But the reason they wanted to do it was because DPR was doing it. So they had to catch up to DPR. And I like, that was this real moment for me where I said, no, we don't want to catch up to DPR. What is it that Turner is best at? Can we apply technology to where Turner is best to be an entirely different model than what, how DPR was executing it, and Obayashi and all the other companies in the Bay Area. So I went to our chief estimator, and I had him pull all of his estimates for the last 5 years. And this is sort of like the beginning of my science-based approach to technology and innovation. I didn't pull all the estimates for 5 years. I went to procurement, had him pull me all the budgets for the last 5 years, and the final budgets, the final cost of the buildings. And we found that Bob Morelli, the estimator, his estimates his margin of error was about 5% overall, right? But when I looked at the bid spread on all the bid spreads were 8 to 9 to 15% in some cases. So he was already within the margin of error of what we're getting from the bidding market. So I said, well, Bob, you don't need to be more accurate, which is what Vico was going to do. You need to be faster, right? So we needed to be able to rapidly get quantities to him, and count. So this is back in the dim distant past of 2012.
Yeah.
So we brought in Celebri, right? Yeah. Brought in Celebri, started using that to count quantities, and got him faster instead of trying to get him more accurate. And it worked out really well, and became sort of a model, I think, for how we approached innovation at Turner in Northern California.
Then you're not chasing something either, right? It's like, because you only know what you think you know about another company. You don't actually know there's this perception that you're chasing. Yeah. And it's really hard to measure against that from making decisions and seeing outcomes that, like, how do you know when you've surpassed them? At some point, you have to ignore your competition when it comes to that and really double down on what you are actually good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's hard to do because, you are competing in a very tight, low margin environment. Architects and engineers and contractors, we are all competing in a very tight margin environment. So you have to find differentiators, and the way to do that is to your point. It's not to do the same thing that everyone else is doing. That's table stakes. You have to do something different to catch the eye of folks. I actually was telling the story just recently that back in New York, I was managing the team that was coordinating Tower 2. So we were doing the continuous coordination in one room. All the trades were in there. They were modeling together. It was our first experiment in continuous coordination. But we were doing Tower 2, and across the hall, Tishman was doing Towers 3 and 4. And I got to know Scott Wood, who was leading that team. And we obviously, whenever construction companies do sales pursuits, they have to do a 4D simulation of the building being built, right? Then we realized that at that point we realized those were table stakes, so we decided to join forces. So every time one of those competitions came out those contracts came out that everyone was chasing, we just did our 4D simulation together. Right. And sometimes it was his guy modeling it. Sometimes it was my team modeling it, just to save on effort. So we could put things into more stuff that really mattered. And no one ever noticed it. Right. Because on this other side, you
didn't even have to ask permission to do that.
No,
because no one ever noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we'd go into presentations, and they'd see the same animation twice in a row, but the customer is not looking at it. Like it was a way to prove that was no longer a way to catch the eye of the customer, right?
Yeah, there's so many technologies like that. And people still like to think of it as the differentiator when, like you said, it's table stakes. It's like, we'll offer them this menu of items. It's like everything on that menu is table stakes. Come on. You've got to stop thinking of sustainability as a menu item. You've got to stop thinking of technology as a menu item. We do design, and design encompasses all that stuff. So it is interesting to think of how much of what we have kind of cut our teeth doing and implemented is now just full on table stakes. Like this is just normal.
Yeah. And, it is, to have that perspective and look back on it, it is really interesting, because when you're in it day to day, and you're trying to get people to move in the direction you want them to move, it feels like no one's moving. It feels like we've been talking about BIM for a decade and a half, and everyone's still trying Revit for the first time on this project, right?
Right.
But in thinking back to where we were 15 years ago, it's remarkable how far we've come, right? It is, the amount of, not necessarily technology, but the way that we have changed the process of how we deliver buildings by leveraging technology to help us has really changed dramatically. And I'm not a natural optimist, but like I start to look at it and think about it. And yeah, it's pretty great that what we've done as a collective group over the last 15 years.
Okay. So another quote comes to mind. We're keeping track with the quote counter.
Yeah.
I think of Steve Jobs' quote at this point where it's like, you can only connect the dots looking backward. You can never connect them going forward. And what you're talking about is, like if you've lived through it, you've got to kind of be in that position to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because the youngest, greenest folks can't do that. Right. But it also helps kind of reset that optimism versus pessimism, ratio, because we do take the new stuff for granted. Like after you've done it for some amount of time, it is normal. It is table stakes. At some point it flips a table and actually becomes those things.
Yeah.
But man, look how you actually have to stop and kind of celebrate. Look how far we actually have come. Is the AEC industry making any inroads into innovation and being more progressive and being more efficient? All these things. It's like there's so much to do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's look at what we've actually accomplished. It's been pretty phenomenal.
Right. Yeah, and it is like the whole language around technology that even executives and leadership can now use, now have access to, is really remarkable. I mean, I feel like every single construction company out there is building out a product team now to build, products they can sell to their customers, products they can sell on the open market, products that they can use internally to make their processes better. It's a really difficult road, but I'm seeing just a staggering amount of investment compared to even 5 years ago in using software as a differentiator or a value add rather than a cost center to the process of delivering buildings.
It is interesting. And I had a show with Rob Yorey, and I don't know if he said this during the show or not, but he talked about what he's doing at NTech, and they're because the show really wasn't about what he's doing now at NTech, but there was a point in which he said that their team, the VDC team, is its own cost center. That changed the game for them because they now obviously know what they're capable of. Instead of trying to sell their wares within the corporation to various teams, they know what they're capable of. They can go out and get their own clients, and they can deliver on what they can execute the best because they fully understand it. Whereas other people, they know a little bit, they know an overview, but they don't know exactitudes. So they're the best ones to sell their own. Yeah. Basically, determine their own destiny with them, and show what they can do, and then have case studies to then show the rest of the company. Say, hey, come along for the ride with us.
Yeah, and it's so. I think I'm thinking now of several conversations I've had with my former boss, Jim Barrett, as the chief innovation officer at Turner. Real like one of the few mentors I've had in my life. I was in a really dark place in my career. While Disney everyone was furloughed from Disney. I didn't know the future was really unclear. And he said, just go help people. Just don't think of anything as transactional. Just like find people in the company who need help and go help them, or find people outside the company and go help them. And this was sort of the philosophy that we had that Jim inspired at Turner. We did modeling work for the charity, but they were building houses post Katrina. So we did volunteer. We took the VDC team and helped them model all their work and help them panelize their process and make it more efficient to build the houses. Or we did some work at Haiti, and it was just a matter of we have this resource. Let's go help people. We have the money, enough money to sustain us, and we've found really great connections to these other organizations and we learned a lot about our own process by doing this work, just by going out and helping people. And it is, I think it's something that obviously it's hard to do in the current sort of service model, consulting service model we have in the industry, because every minute that someone's not spending on profitable work is anxious, makes the boss anxious, right?
Sure.
But I really think in thinking back on it too, it always returns many more fold than the effort we take to do the thing.
It's interesting because, again, I think you're coming back to this. I don't know if it's a theme yet, but it's going to be the idea of doing what we're good at, right? And offering it. Even if it's not your day-to-day, it's something that you realize you have the skill, you've got capacity, let's go do this thing, let's offer it up. There's so many firms out there, Annette, if you're between jobs, I for a point was between jobs, and I look back and I think companies always want to be something else. Not every company, but a lot of companies don't know who they are enough, and so they want to be something else. And so they're always chasing. They're in that kind of reactive mode of wanting to be something they're not, versus knowing who you are, knowing what you're good at, and kind of doubling down on it so that you can provide more value right where you are. Because part of chasing something unknown is that you're learning it for the first time often. And we know that you don't always even learn it right the first time, right? You've got to learn it. This is why the construction, I don't know if you read Construction Physics, the Substack.
Yes. Oh, Brian is an immediate read for me when it comes through. His mindset around these issues is so clear and precise, and it's exactly things I've been talking about as well. And
it's like stuff we all know, but he writes it so well. It's like, okay, now I never even have to worry. I can just send this to somebody.
Yeah.
but you talk about like the embedded nature of the way we do things in this industry, right? Yeah. And this is why we do it, because we've always done it this way. And because every piece of the puzzle is a silo, right? And so there's just kind of this general level of expectation out there. And that's why this industry actually works. Like we can complain about it all we want, but it does get buildings built and occupants in said buildings that they paid for in the end somehow. It's very interesting.
I think of the famous Paul Teicholz graph, right? You've seen the construction productivity from 1960 to 2004 or whatever it was, whenever he did it.
It's a very slight hump. Yeah.
Yeah. It actually goes down at the end, right?
Yes.
By the measure he would, and obviously we can dispute, like there's been much dispute about the methodology there and everything. And I don't want to get into that, but there are a lot of different theories as to why that is. And one that I keep coming back to is that we don't learn from our mistakes as an industry because we're project based, because once the project is over,
it's in the archive bin. What's next?
Yeah. Thank God we got through it.
Right.
Thank God we got through it and we didn't get sued and there wasn't too much change management that happened and we were able to get it done. Right. And that, like if you look at it, we get every year we're like maybe 1% better or 2% worse or 3% better or whatever.
Kind of
and it
averages
just
out. Yeah.
Averages out. And, it's, I think you're spot on that we don't, if we don't learn from our mistakes, we just keep doing that same thing that we've always done. Right. We keep, because we've always done it and it's predictable and it's as de-risked as you can be in a project by project industry, right? Because that's the thing. What you're talking about with firms not knowing who they are, I think firms actually honestly actively lie to themselves about what they are. Right? There's the stories we tell about what we are don't align with the reality of the work we do in a lot of cases, especially on the construction side. Construction management is the facilitation of information moving between the designer, the owner, and subcontractors, and the facilitation of moving money between those people, and also shifting risk between those people. So a construction management firm is actually a knowledge worker firm, but they all tell the story that they're muddy boots builders and that superintendents that run everything. And, the superintendent is a highly specialized person that is desirable on your staff. It's not the path to leadership in most any construction firm because they're passionate about that work. But yeah, it's getting a construction firm to realize that they are knowledge workers and that they are, their primary goal is informational transactions between different parties, and how do you speed those up? It's difficult when the story you tell is where, muddy boots on the ground.
I think that's key insight, and I've never thought of it that way. Let's rewind the tape and play that part again. It was so interesting for you to frame it like that, because like my experience as an architect and as a builder myself on small projects, and actually doing design build for a while, the reason I didn't think about that is because I was hands-on and I was the one doing the building. And so it's hard to kind of remove myself from that point of view, thinking about the value of construction and how hard it actually is, and all the tools that you need to have, and all the sequencing knowledge that you need to have. And you are talking about a role that has obviously evolved over time to the point of taking that risk on from various other parties, or inventing it, like just seeing a hole, a void, and filling it. That's really interesting to think about. And I can see why, with that kind of a scenario, a builder like Turner would want to build a team like you had, right? Which is very much in control of BIM and VDC and sequencing in software ahead of time, and actually being in control of all that information, because small tweaks there probably yield huge returns in the end. And I want, like you say, they lie to themselves. That's just a generality, right? But it's like, no, we're builders. But are you? Like you don't swing you're pushing pixels, you're pushing bits, you're pushing ones and zeros, to gain efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually add any direct value. We enable the value to be created, and it's the same thing with architects. We enable the value to be created. The value is the building. There's no intrinsic value in a set of plans.
The process, yeah,
right. It's part of a process,
mm-hmm.
And there's no intrinsic value in a schedule. Except that it gets you to the thing that has the value. Yeah, and that's a really difficult. Everyone wants to add value, thinks that they're key in the process, but like it's all enabling that guy who's got a hammer and and a nail, and to know where to put that nail.
It's hard to put a pin in value when you're saving a company from potential problems, right? Like, because if they don't happen ever,
then they're not problems. Yeah,
right.
How do you convince someone to pay to de-risk a situation he doesn't see it? They don't see as risky, right?
Yeah.
That was like the big struggle, I think, of the early days of BIM coming into construction. These were, again, because we just do things the way we do them. We expect we expect a certain amount of waste and a certain amount of risk, and we're okay with that. We build it into our pricing model, right? And architects do as well. And because it's all accounted for, there's, they think, well, sure, I've already handled that risk, or there is no risk there. I don't need to do a 4D simulation to see what's going on. I don't need to have a continuous updating schedule or estimate, because it's not worth the effort for the risk that I believe exists there. This is, again, I don't know where the provenance of the quote, but I heard it from Jim Barrett. It was the first place I heard it, is that a problem is a hole in your brain for a solution to fall into, right? If you don't have a problem, or you don't see that problem, it's just going to bounce off, not commit, not be a successful part of the practice.
Blind spots leave a lot of those holes unfilled.
Yeah. Well, or you have people who, there's in the world of cognitive biases, that, the idea of naive forecasting, which it's not as terrible as it sounds, but it's basing your current or future work on the problem that was the most recent in your memory. Mm-hmm. So if your last project had terrible problems with the HVAC design or construction, it's all you focus on, right? And you let the other problems slip through. And the problems are like water; they're gonna slip through. They're gonna find the cracks in your structure, in your system. Yeah, and yeah. You said something earlier about being able to. I don't remember the exact words you used, but it made me think of how we set out a plan. Like the plans, sheets of drawings are a plan to execute. They're not a very good plan in often cases, because there's a lot to interpret. There's a lot of skill that required in interpreting those and recompositing them as a building. And we react to change very, very poorly, I think, as an industry. I think we do it. We get through and we muddle through change management. But, the idea, I'm still baffled that we set schedules and think that they're of any value.
They're fiction.
At the beginning of a project.
They're like time cards in an AEC firm.
Yeah. And creative fiction. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you end up, I actually thought about this a while back that if you think about a critical path for a large building, like a P3 project, it's got maybe 600 items on a critical path. And the odds, and this is something that I wrote research at Turner, the odds that we hit the day of completion of every task exactly were about 20 to 21%. Right? Sometimes we were faster, sometimes we were slower, but nailing that day and being predictable along schedule. So if you think about it, if we have a 600 linear, these are coin flips. They're worse than coin flips because it's a die roll where you have to roll a 6. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
And you have to make 600 consecutive 6s. The odds of ending on time are infinitesimal. We started talking to, again at Turner, the Lean Enterprise Institute out of Boston. And we brought Jim Womack, who wrote The Toyota Way. We brought him down to look at our process in New York. And he's like, the first thing he said after we laid out the process of building, he's like, I don't know how you get this done at all. I don't know. And that's also, I think that's on my mind because that was Brian's most recent the construction physics newsletter.
Right.
But it's an incredibly complex task and they're all, and there's so much unpredictability. How do you get to?
He lays a few of them out. It's like, today we hit a boulder. Oops. We had 7 days of rain. Oops, we had this. Oops, they didn't show up to the job on time, which everything is dependent on the thing happening correctly before it. Right. And people have a skill if they're a tradesperson, right? The same people who install the HVAC cannot do the framing, and the framing needs to be in place before they do the HVAC. So it is a really complex problem. And what's interesting to me and what kind of made me rethink some of my own thinking around this is how broken is it? Like it's huge. This topic of conversation about it being broken, and it feels very broken. It makes me wonder how broken actually it is because it still works. And so how can we optimize the right things, to kind of get back to one of our earlier statements? Like, how can we optimize what we actually are good at? Like, it makes me think, okay, so from a Turner point of view, architects are doing BIM for a set of sheets to get approved by an agency, which conveys design intent, not instructions on how to build a building, amongst other instruments of service, right? Like the specs and all that stuff. So from a construction or a contractor's point of view or a CM's point of view, that set of drawings was not made for you necessarily. Right. There's a lot of different uses of a model. That's one of them, which is to basically create the design intent to build a building from. Let's take a short break from the conversation to talk about this episode's sponsor. Let's talk ArcViz technology. Powered by the near-limitless Unreal Engine, our friends at Twinmotion offer a fast and easy way to produce stunning real-time visualizations and immersive experiences for your clients. Twinmotion gives you the tools you need to make faster decisions and relay information to your clients in a way that instantly speaks to them. Breathe life into your scene by changing the season, the weather, the time of day, just by moving a slider, immersing your client in a way that they'll love and, more importantly, be able to truly picture themselves in. Seriously, it's that easy. You have to try it to believe it. So why not share your design with stakeholders in collaborative reviews and edit your scene together? I'm a huge fan of this. There's no better way to get buy-in than by making your clients feel part of the development process. Right now, they're running an exclusive free trial for listeners of this show, which you can head to twinmotion.link/TRXL to get your hands on. Once again, that's twinmotion.link/TRXL. And now let's get back to our conversation. If you were to just take a fresh look at this, or maybe you think about this a lot, I don't know, but it's what should architects be asking CMs and contractors to get into the drawings to make that process go better? Because that's my point of view is we just don't even ask the right questions. to the people who are actually going to be building it, because we have other incentives, being spend less time on that project so you can be more profitable, being this is for permit, this isn't for this, its ultimate use isn't for that, or it's for visualization, or it's for an energy model, or innumerable things. But what questions should we as architects be asking? Or is it just fine how it is? Or is it impossible to even answer that question?
So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, obviously. Again, a quote from a friend of mine, a good friend, Jeffrey McGrew, runs Model Number and Because We Can out here in San Francisco, or in Oakland. He said that, when he's doing drawings, 50% of the drawing is for the authorities. It's for the permit. 50% is for the contractor and what they need to build, and 50% is for covering his ass.
Yeah.
Right. And so you end up with
that's 150%.
Exactly. And obviously our tools make it like that was one of the big selling points of Revit when it came out. It's easy to put a sheet together. It's faster, so we started putting together more and more sheets. And at one point at Turner, we had the opportunity to model Avery Fisher Hall at Lincoln Center, because they were going to do a renovation of it. And I got the original structural drawings for that when they were 13 pages.
I was going to say, how thin was this set?
The overall set was under 100 pages.
Yeah.
For a massive concert hall. And because there was an economy to them, because they were hand drawn, so every piece of information was instantiated once and back referenced everywhere on the drawings. The curve of the wall, I remember, I had to hunt for where's the actual curve of the concert hall's wall, and I found it on one page where they set out all of the geometries.
That was the hard and fast rule back then, right? It was do it once. Yep. Yeah. Don't duplicate information on multiple sheets, because guess what? When it changes, you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly. But then our tools have evolved to allow us to produce more faster. So we produce more faster. And I think it actually leads to less good drawing sets. But, I think one thing the thing I want to unpack about that is the lack of empathy in the industry. Every architect, if you get them drunk, will talk about how the contractor doesn't understand their design, how they've messed up this, how they're trying to substitute that. They're trying to do all these things that detract from my artistic or design intent. You get any contractor drunk, well, you got to give them more alcohol. Usually when they get drunk, they start talking about, well, this architect doesn't know anything about how this building goes together. And they don't understand what we go through and blah, 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 blah.
And they're both right.
And they're both right. They're absolutely both right, because, you value, there are different things you value and the different things you're paying attention to. And because of that, I think it's hard to have empathy grow. Like, what is trying to figure out what a contractor needs on the drawing as an architect is difficult, because you have to put yourself in their mindset.
Trying to know is a lot different than just asking, though, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I think asking
that pride gets in the way.
What gets to a set, well, there's definitely pride, but I think it gets to the second point with the empathy is that there's no, it's a combative industry. We're all competing for to extract as many dollars as we can from this project, so that we can pay our staff and feed our families and so forth. This makes me think, they're obviously in a design bid build world, you're going to have antipathy. You're going to have people at each other's throats, because you're just throwing a set of drawings over the wall and hoping it works out, and then
picking the lowest bidder,
and then RFIs start coming back over the wall, right?
Yeah.
From the lowest bidders. And I thought going to Disney, because they were vertically integrated, and even WeWork or Katera at the time, I thought that was the future, because consolidating design, engineering, and construction under one roof should mean that everyone's aligned and working towards the same goal.
Yeah,
it didn't turn out to be the case, right? Because everyone brings their baggage from the industry. We had the architecture and engineering team that didn't trust the construction management team at Disney, and they just fought the same battles. It was better, but it wasn't perfect, because they're bringing all of this mistrust and lack of empathy to a place where they really should and could be working together. And I think it's why also IPD just sort of failed to crack more than like 1% of projects in the country, just because it's very difficult to take people who have been proven right about their mistrust of their counterparty.
Well, and that negativity is a cancer for sure.
Yeah.
Because and what I mean by that is it spreads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like wildfire. And not only that, but because our teams are so transient, one team that works on one project is not even going to be the same team, most likely, that works on the next project, let alone bringing the multiple silos together. So you talk about IPD, like it works for that project because they're so embedded and they're spending so much face time together, and they're finishing each other's sentences in the big room and doing that live coordination and solving problems together, like actually working through the problems together builds relationship. And when that project's over, that team doesn't go to the next project. They disperse, and then parts of it might come back, but chances are cancer's going to come in, right? Who didn't have that experience. They've had plenty of other terrible experiences.
Right.
And they're bringing that baggage to the table. And it's a very real thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're talking about this bright, warm future that we could have together.
Right. Yeah. The transiency of the teams is absolutely that's sort of the death knell of that. I mean, one of the things that was really cool in New York is that when we starting out with BIM at Yankee Stadium and then World Trade Center, there were so few trade draftsmen who could model. We'd see the same 10 people on every project. They were they were
experts.
Yeah. And so that there was actually a time in New York when people were really performing. We actually, going from the coordination at World Trade to the coordination at the New York Police Academy, which was the next project on the list, it was the same team that moved over, and they were wildly productive. They coordinated that thing just astoundingly fast. It was a big success story that we talked about for years when we go to conferences, because you'd had a team that had already built trust by sitting in a room together at the World Trade Center for 6 months. And the cool thing about the side thing about that project is that we were actually sitting in a law firm and had collapsed during the 2008 crisis. And so we were sitting at this like massive oak $600,000 like boardroom table, and all these guys, just sitting around it and talking to each other constantly. And, like on the 42nd floor of World
like
Trade
imagining
7.
design studio in a law firm.
Yeah.
Boardroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's true, because you think about the way that these teams come together now, and especially with, I wonder kind of what the future holds because of, well, there's kind of two competing things right now. There's the need for housing, new buildings, and there's this huge need of renovation, existing stock, or reuse. They're not. I think I was talking about this with Fed on the show. It was like the answer is not always a new building, right? And we do have a lot of stuff out there, which means smaller projects, which means a lot more moving around, a lot more light touch, a lot more adding value, but at the expense of the kind of relationships that we're talking about, I think. I don't know. And that's to me where technology really could come in and be a tool to be used to level everybody up together if everybody is willing to acknowledge the problem and share resources. I mean, I know that's what Ian's trying to do at Hypar with creating a platform that people can share resources on. I know there's other technologies out there that are of kind of a similar mode of thinking, which is like, stop reinventing the wheel. Let's all move forward together. But everybody is so heads down on the project, and there is so much cancer out there that it makes it really hard to meaningfully change and move forward together.
Yeah. And I just realized that, we've spent the last hour talking about the past. Yeah. There's two old men talking about the past. What great podcast that makes.
But this is exactly what is needed so that we don't take what we have for granted. Like this fulfills what I was saying earlier, I hope.
But yeah, like I really like some of the way that I think I would expand on what Fed said and say like sometimes the best building isn't even a building. Yeah. And of course we as designers and builders, we just assume that that's because our business model is
what we do. Yeah.
Doing drawing sheets or building buildings. It's, that's the solution every time. I really I haven't really talked to folks recently who are doing this, but there was a trend for a little while of architects building out consulting groups, like business consulting inside of their business, as a way of creating a greater connection to their customer, and going in and saying, okay, you think you need this new building. Let's work with you to see if we can, actually change your business around or change your physical infrastructure around so that you can still exist in the same space and that you have, which is a really fascinating way to prosecute like a design problem, right? Rather than thinking about the risky thing of building an entire building, let's think about how we can,
or the expense. Yeah. We had a success story like that at HMC where it was an existing OR, and there was tons and tons of problems. Because hospitals actually do capture pretty good data, we were able to take that, run it through simulations, and say, okay, here's where the bottlenecks are. Let's move these 3 walls. They thought they needed a whole new wing, a whole new tower to the hospital. They didn't. They needed to move some walls. Yeah. And that basically guarantees you a client for life when you do something like that too. Right. Yeah. But it's hard to see that far down the road when I need to feed families and keep the machine running right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you deliver them the value of a tower. Mm-hmm. With moving 3 walls. I mean, so if we go into thinking about value-based pricing, you should have gotten the amount that you would have gotten for executing an entire tower. Right. But yeah, that's I think another real problem is making selling hours is really, I think it's on its way out. I hope it's on its way out. Yeah. It's selling value is hopefully the future. Yeah. I think, again, technology helps with that, right? I'm really impressed with some of the stuff that like Lend-Lease is doing with Podium. And again, they're hoarding it themselves, right? They're saying we're going to create the product, which is maybe not as ideal as like say Hypar or other platforms that are about sharing knowledge and sharing expertise, but they're doing market analysis, right? Like we can do market analysis so you can see where the best place is to put your building. We can give that to you. And we've already delivered value to you then if you've identified the right site. And so I think, there's a lot of cool technology-enabled stuff that's going to expand the scope, not necessarily drive into our core business practices, but expand the scope of business for architects, engineers, and contractors.
Yeah, a close friend of mine recently said, licensed architects kind of puts you in a pretty narrow definition. What we really are is licensed problem solvers. Yep. And every problem needs a licensed problem solver. It doesn't matter. And it helps us reframe who we are and what the value is that we bring to the table when the answer does not naturally go to it's a building, right? So by being trained as problem solvers, it opens you up to a world of opportunity to do things like what we're talking about here. Yeah. And then I think your value is then proven in a much more real way to a lot bigger of an audience, because we all know how small the audience is who actually buys architecture, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually have a question for you on that. Like if we had, that's the thing that you're looking for. That's the thing you're trying to bring into your firm. How do you identify those people when you're trying to hire folks to do that kind of work?
That's a good question. I think, man, I don't even know how to answer that, because how do you identify that in people that you've never worked with before, right? So that's a tough nut to crack. And I don't think there's a lot of people in the architectural industry who necessarily even know to speak about themselves in that way. The way that I do it with stories that I tell are about the more intangible things that clients have said about projects that I've done for them. And so, for instance, there's one client who I designed an elementary school for, and I mean, it's a district, right? So it's not a person, it's not a single figurehead. It was a board, and it was lots and lots of stakeholders, and the public had not seen what the school looks like yet at all. And they're at a board meeting, public's there, and they say, when do we get to see it? What's it going to be like? Because obviously they have a vested interest. Their kids are going to be going there. If they're thinking about construction schedules and all those things, and the timing lines up for when their kids are going to end up in a K-12 or a K-6 school. So he just said, he put his hand on the guy's shoulder and said, "It's the school you've always dreamed of." And to me, that is the kind of thing that I could wear on my shoulder for years to come as a designer, but also as somebody who, like, getting back to that empathy and trying to solve that's what designers do. They're trying to solve problems for their clients in the public realm. You're trying to really understand their problems, not the problems of the administration and the infighting and the politics and all. You got to do that too, but you also have to design it for the kids who are going to be there every day.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that answers your question. I might be completely off topic, but I tend to think it's a lot more intangible. You have to tell stories like that so that people can see the possibilities of outcomes and imagine themselves in a better future later.
Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the nose there. That's the thing. I'm always looking for people who have the imagination to tell the story of what they want to happen, right? You have that problem solving skills, and I think architects again are the education is such that you end up being a really good systems thinker coming out of architectural education. You think about, multivariable optimization is sort of implicit in every decision you make as an architect, because you're trying to optimize this project so that it can get built, so that you can see it in the world. I mean, unless you're a star architect and you just want to build a giant staircase.
A shiny staircase.
A shiny staircase.
Well, like Dave Gilmore, our mutual friend, I think he says, you don't want to be an architecture firm. You want to be a solutions provider.
Yeah.
Right. So thinking widely, don't think so narrowly about what it is that you were trained to do in school as an outcome. But this is very much like a licensed problem solver kind of a thinking, right? It's like you can help people in lots of ways, kind of like the example you shared at Turner when you guys decided to help people panelize so that they could build replacement housing faster. It's like that's a solution that nobody would have come to you for. You had to actually go to them and say, "Hey,
figure out what
with this?"
Yeah. Figuring out what they need is So going out, and then that extends to the software world too. It's just you have to go out and talk to people and figure out what they are looking for, what problem you actually want to solve, what problem they want to solve more than they want to have money. Right, that's the way. I think you have to build a product that they want more than they want the money that's in their bank account. Right,
way to frame it. Yeah,
and so you have to really be radically attuned to the customer's desire. And then it's interesting too. You think about like software is easier in some ways because it is the customer's right there. But to your point, the customer of that K-6 school are the kids in the school. And so you're getting a translation of a translation of a translation.
Yeah.
And then you're creating a set of drawings that are then translated and by the CM and then translated by the subcontractors. And exactly. A big game of telephone, right?
And there's so much pushback in the middle of that scenario where a contractor is going to be like, well, why are you doing it like this? And then it's like, oh my God, I got to go back through so many layers of the onion to even answer that question because like the answer's there. There's a reason why we decided to do that. It's deep. It's buried over there. It's not like I just decided to do that just because and for no reason. Yeah, that's.
I mean, I've always thought the way I sort of visualize the money in the process of building, is money accretes at points of friction in the process, right? If there's a point of friction that can be solved with a piece of software, you buy the piece of software. If there's a point of friction that can be solved by expert analysis, you hire the expert, right? And so, when we talk about building a frictionless data pipeline for the industry, which is like I think a lot of people's goal these days, I think it kind of scares folks in the value chain because, like, well, if it's frictionless, where do I add my value? Where do I add my value and take out my money? And am I being made irrelevant with this technology? And I don't want to pick it up because it may impact my bottom line. One of the things I always see with one of the things that CMs are always trying to get out of their relationships with their subcontractors is productivity rates. How fast can you do these things? How much labor does it take you to do these things? And then subcontractors, of course, guard that information very closely, because if they, they alone know their margin when they're bidding work, right? And so the CM is trying to guess when they get the bid in, how close is, like, how much are they taking away from me in profit by me offloading this risk and this contract onto them? And I say that's why, subcontractors drive Maseratis and CMs drive BMWs and architects drive Volvos, right? Is it the more risk there is, the more you can take profit out of a faulty and frictionful system.
Friction filled. Yeah. It what's interesting to me is with the democratization of, let's just processes via technology, people who don't adopt will just get usurped anyway. And so no matter how much they try to protect or to hang on to that thing, it can't last forever, right? Like somebody will find a way around it. I kind of worry about that for our whole profession of architecture though, right? Because right now you have to use an architect because you need that stamp for certain building typologies. But what if you didn't? Would people go to architects still if they didn't? Pretty much not, right? Like I know that there was a survey at one point where they asked other professions like lawyers and doctors and CPAs and all these. Okay, so if you didn't have to use an architect to do the exact same thing that you need them to do right now for you, would you use them? Heck no. No way. Yeah. Immediate answer. Didn't even have to think about it, right? Because they don't see the value in the process, which is where we have staked our claim, is by creating this, black box of a process. Yeah. And it's like, no thanks. I would rather just get the building, right? I just want the thing at the end of the journey. I don't want to go through the journey necessarily to get there. Yeah.
I mean, the journey is only, the journey is only necessary because it's necessary, right? It's a sort of teleological argument that, you have to do it because of regulation or because you don't have the ability to take your program and turn it into a physical building. You don't have that skill set. Yeah. This is always a touchy area, right? Because this is where we start talking about people losing jobs, which is like, that's one of the things that I really worry about with software going forward is, I don't worry about necessarily people losing jobs to a piece of software, or certainly not to a bricklaying robot, right? But I do worry about people being able to adapt to a new business model. That there is going to emerge a new business model for architects and contractors is going to emerge in the next couple of decades, and there's going to be survivors, and there's going to be people who can't make that transition. And again, like the Steve Jobs quote, you can't connect the dots forward right now. I'm actually having a really hard time being a futurist these days because everything is so in flux and there's so much innovation happening in all corners of the industry. It's hard to pick out what are the things that are going to be really important to us in 10 years. I think, I know I'm no longer there, but I think what Hypar is doing is going to be radically important to the industry in the next decade. I think that not necessarily generative design, but the ability to program, do a declarative programming of a building. Say, be able to tell a computer software, I want to build a building. And once upon a time, there was a little house that was at the corner of 60th Street in San Pablo, had 2 stories. Be able to tell a story to it in natural language and have it actually execute that is, that's a way again, but that's a way where the architects lose out unless they're the ones writing those algorithms and writing that software, which is again why I think that Hypar's project is so important, because it does give that power back to the people who are, who can, download their expertise into a platform and then earn money every time it's used, right? Turning architecture into a product, turning your design intent into a product. It's going to be very difficult. And I think, we are starting to see obviously a lot of programming and computational work happening in the schools, but I think we need to have more. I mean, I think we, we should be learning. I never learned a programming language in my architecture program, which is, and it's okay. I'm a dinosaur now, and I'm okay with that. But like, that's going to be wildly important in the next couple of decades to be able to distill your knowledge and your expertise into a piece of software, right?
Well, especially if you are interested in designing the future in which this profession will inhabit, instead of just being along for the ride and kind of experiencing it, for better or worse. Chances are worse if you don't agree. if you're not part of the decision making, then you probably won't like what you get. So for a tool like that one to exist, amongst others, that puts the agency into the hands of those willing to roll up their sleeves and do it, we absolutely need that education to happen. So yeah.
Well, and I think thinking about your current project, like there's so much. I think the vast majority of what a construction manager can do can be automated away, and because it's about connecting information between subcontractors and the design team, and interpreting that information and giving direction. I think a lot of that has a chance to be automated as well. And I don't think that construction management firms are as prepared, even as architects, for that future right now. What's positive about the future? What are you excited about right now?
I was going to ask you that, actually. Like your fingers are on, I think, the pulse more than mine. You want to take a crack at that one first? I'll riff off of it.
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, obviously I'm excited about, the declarative programming of programmatic execution of buildings. It's what you find when you start doing product management is that there are a billion things you can do, and they're all really cool. And that, like, you become much more capable of saying the word no than the word yes. So I'm trying to rack my brain out to think of the things that are really exciting moving forward. I don't know that they're, I really like the companies that are exciting me right now are companies that have a very clear value proposition and easy to scaffold into an organization. There's a company out of Los Altos called Versatile AI, and they have just a sensor rig that you can attach to a crane hook, right? So you get the pick, the load capacities, all the things, and it's also a camera, so you can see the whole site and see where better to put a camera than on the crane over the site. And now they're building this real wealth of analytics around the process of construction. They're going to be able to do, and I think everyone is sort of converging on this now in the AI space, but like Autodesk and Procore and Versatile and other folks converging on the space where you can use artificial intelligence and predictive analytics to spot problems before the superintendent spots them, right? Or spot problems before the job captain spots them. That's, that to me is a, if I'm framing this all as like what excites me is things that remove friction from the process. And that removes a lot of friction when you can see things faster than you could before. There's, being able to know it before it happens is key value.
Is it pretty easy for companies in that realm to adopt that type of stuff because they see that immediate value?
Yeah, I think, so I've had a mixed experience with that. I've said people that by doing, predictive loading of scheduling, with Reconstruct was another great piece of software, or just, Procore's observation and analysis that you have inside the platform. It is valuable if it's credible. And that's the difficulty with any AI or ML solution, is that when you present it to an expert, it's very hard for them to say, "Oh, I didn't see that." They're like, "Of course, that's how it is. I saw that before, right?" And the value proposition really then is you have one great contractor, one great superintendent. Now you have 50 great superintendents, right? You have the knowledge of your best superintendent, or you have the knowledge of your best drywall installer that can be disseminated across the organization through software and through their eye for trouble and risk can get disseminated to everyone in the organization, which makes everyone more powerful, right?
Yeah, I guess it gets back to that idea of being, having a solution that is preventative of some future problem that I don't have right now. It's
Right.
hard to adopt that kind of. I think something that, as a big generality, and maybe I have a kind of a balanced two-sided thing here, which is I'm excited that there's so many. Number one, just like VC money and investment happening in all of the different pieces of the puzzle where there is that very distinct value proposition amongst many different players. And they're not really trying to step on each other's toes. They're trying to solve the one thing, and these things talk to each other via APIs, and it provides a holistic solution together. And it's not reliant upon a single monolithic solution because not everybody has the same problem, number one, right? So if new features get added to the monolith this year, it only serves a very small segment of the user base. Whereas if you're kind of putting your own puzzle together, you get to pick and choose, as often as you want to swap a piece in or pull a piece out or whatever.
That's why it's fascinating. Like I've seen numerous times when people have tweeted out what they believe is like the best current tech stack for an architecture firm. Like George Valdez, said if I was an architecture firm, like these 7 pieces of software are the crucial pieces of software for developing the business. But thinking about it as a tech stack rather than as these individual platforms, so you can combine and recombine how the information moves between them, in this sort of graph of all of the products and tools you have. And you can draw new value streams by connecting different nodes on the graph, in real time with these separate and distinct platforms, right? That like hopefully we'll all talk to each other. Like that's the real struggle. And I think the VCs have turned the corner on this. Like a lot, 5 years ago, it seemed like everyone was trying to convince these tools to become platforms, to expand out. Like PlanGrid started with plan visualization, then it comes into issue management and all these other things. And everyone sort of converged back to project management, which was the real problem. But there was, the VCs were telling them to gain users, gain platform, gain more functionality, grab market share from other people. And I think that's changing. I think they're now much more strategic about, be the best thing you can be the best solution for a specific problem, and then connect to all of the other tools very effectively.
Realizing that there's pretty much a cap at how big you can get or how far you can go.
Yeah.
I think my balanced take on this, though, is that it's very real, right? There's this digital fatigue out there. And for the people who are actually doing the work, another app is just like another headache, right? And it's another UI that I have to learn, and it's another set of keyboard shortcuts, and where am I going to save my files? And to me, that's probably the biggest downside is people just don't want to hear about another piece of the puzzle. And so that's where change management is very difficult, because it is easy to buy a single piece of software that does it all, or a suite that is all run by one company, because they are highly integrated and they do talk to each other really well already. So that fatigue is real, and recognizing that and still trying to find a way to solve a problem in a great way is a balancing act that's really hard. Really hard that people have to deal with.
I hate to dip into the past again, but just the, when we were, I was Turner and DPR were doing a joint venture at the Google campus in Mountain View. And working with Google is interesting because they bring a lot of knowledge and expertise that we don't think about in the industry to the table. So we did a penetration test, security analysis of the job site trailer. And we found that there were 37 different platforms and tools that were moving information in and out of that trailer. And so that's a huge problem, because I don't know where to look I have to hold my head, the 37 different places I have to look for information. And it's why I think Procore is so successful, because they're trying to do this. They're trying to be the platform where you can go and get every single piece of information.
The single source of truth, right?
And I wonder if there is if maybe they are the future as they build up their marketplace, right? That they could act as a hub where all this information is reporting into a single source of truth, a single feed. And rather than, having it be locked in different platforms, locked behind certain, gated gardens, shall we say.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I wish mine could be even more positive than that, but I do feel like it's kind of balanced, right? There are two sides to that coin, and I see new developments happening every day that I'm really excited about that nobody wants to hear about.
Yeah,
it's the world we live in. So,
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate hanging out with you today and having this conversation about all things. It's been really fun.
Yeah, this is great. I always love a conversation like this, and you know, I apologize to your listeners for spending so much time in the dim and distant past. Next time we talk, we'll have to make a rule that we're just looking forward. We're just looking at the next 5 to 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, well, let's do it again. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Evan.
Thank you to Twinmotion for their support of this episode of Troxel Podcast. You can visit twinmotion.link/TRXL, or I've made it easy for you. Just click the link in the show notes and download your copy of Twinmotion for free. This show is part of the Gabled Media Podcast Network. You can see all the shows at gabledmedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what I'm doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and of course, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at trxl.co/podcast, where you can find every episode. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just search for eTroxel. Talk to you soon.